Atlanta at 2 a.m. Empty highways, yellow streetlights on rain-slicked asphalt, the glow of a hospital beyond a chain-link fence, smoke rising from a restaurant vent. Atlanta doesn't sleep. Not really. It just goes quiet enough that the people who live between midnight and morning can finally hear themselves think. There's a world that exists only after midnight. The nurses who hold strangers' hands in the dark, the men who carry secrets too heavy for daylight, the ones who are so good at surviving that they've forgotten how to actually live. She worked the night shift at Grady Memorial. He owned the only restaurant in Midtown that stayed open until 4 a.m. They never should have met, but midnight has a way of erasing the lines that daylight draws. If you want to find out what happens when the most dangerous man in Atlanta falls for the one woman who isn't afraid of the dark, subscribe right now and don't go anywhere. The ER is controlled chaos tonight. 3 GSWs from a West Side altercation, a diabetic crash in Bay 4, and a woman screaming in Tagalog that nobody is translating fast enough. Aya Oliver moves through it all like water finding a path through stone. Calm, precise. She has been doing this for 4 years, and she has learned that panic costs seconds, and seconds cost lives. At 1:47 a.m., the chaos settles. The GSWs are stabilized. The diabetic woman is sleeping. The Tagalog woman, it turns out, just needed her son called. Aya figured that out by pulling up a translation app herself. Allison Carter leans against the nurse's station, eating crackers from a vending machine bag. When did you last eat a real meal? Define real. Something that required a plate and wasn't eaten standing over a patient chart. Aya thinks about it. She genuinely cannot remember. There's that Korean barbecue place, Midnight Soot. It's open until 4. I went last week after the overnight. Aya, the broth alone is worth the walk. And it's only 6 blocks. I don't eat alone at restaurants at 2 in the morning. You eat alone at restaurants at 2 in the morning all the time. You just do it at Waffle House like a person with no joy. Beat. Is the broth actually good? I almost cried. And I don't cry. The restaurant is something Aya doesn't expect. Beautiful. Low dark wood, warm amber light, individual charcoal grills built into each table like altars. The smell hits her at the door. Twinjang, sesame, something slow cooked and deep, and her stomach responds with an embarrassing urgency. There are maybe 8 other customers this late. A couple in the corner, a group of 3 young men who look like they just got off a late shift somewhere. The hostess, young, efficient, seats Aya at a window table without her asking, as if they know she'll want to watch the street. She orders the ox bone broth, solongtang. She's had it once before, years ago, at a restaurant in Doraville with her brother Marcus. He'd ordered for both of them because she didn't know what anything was, and he'd been so proud of himself for knowing. She doesn't let herself finish that thought. The broth arrives. It is white as milk, clean as anything she's ever tasted, and she is 3 spoonfuls in when she becomes aware that someone is watching her. She looks up. He is sitting at a table near the back, not a customer's table, she realizes, but positioned like an owner's vantage point. A man in a black suit that cost more than her monthly rent. Korean, mid-30s, with the kind of stillness that isn't relaxation, but control. Dark eyes, a jaw set like he's perpetually deciding something. He isn't looking at her rudely. He's looking at her the way people look at things they didn't expect to find beautiful and aren't sure what to do with that information. She holds his gaze for exactly 3 seconds. She's an ER nurse. She doesn't look away from things, and then returns to her broth. 2 minutes later, a server arrives with a small plate of panchan she didn't order. Kimchi, spinach namul, braised black beans. I didn't order these. Compliments of the owner. She looks back toward the man's table. He's looking at a folder of papers now, as if he hasn't moved. But the corner of his mouth does something that isn't quite a smile. She eats the panchan. It's extraordinary. She comes back. She tells herself it's the broth. She is seated at the same window table. She suspects this is not a coincidence, and orders the same salongtang. This time, she brings a paperback. She is 40 pages in when the chair across from her scrapes back and he sits down without asking. She looks up. "You've been staring at page 41 for 11 minutes. You've been watching me read? I own the restaurant. I watch everything." Beat. She sets the book down. "Is this how you treat all your customers after midnight?" "Only the ones who look like they're working very hard at being somewhere else in their head." A long pause. She wants to be annoyed. She isn't, quite. "Aya Oliver. Jyn Alordi. You own this place." "I do." "You're here every night?" "I don't sleep well." "Neither do I. I just have the advantage of a job that lets me not sleep productively." Something shifts in his expression. A recognition. "What do you do?" "ER nurse, Grady Memorial, night shift." He nods slowly, as if this explains the specific quality of exhaustion she carries. Not lazy tiredness, but the kind that comes from running hard in the dark. "How long have you worked nights?" 4 years. You?" A pause that carries weight. Longer than that. Over the next 3 weeks, Aya comes to midnight soot 4 more times. Each time, sometime between 2 and 3 a.m., Jyn appears at her table as if drawn there by a force he isn't fighting particularly hard. They talk the way people talk when they're tired enough to be honest. She tells him about the ER, the things that stick with her, the faces she sees at the ceiling when she tries to sleep. She doesn't tell him about Marcus yet. That's a door she doesn't open easily. He tells her about the restaurant, the recipes, his grandmother's halongtang base, that the kitchen has spent 2 years trying to perfectly replicate. He talks about food with the only softness she ever sees in him. When he talks about anything else, he's carved from stone. One night, she asks him why he's always at the restaurant so late, instead of at home. Home is quiet in the wrong way. What's the right kind of quiet? This. She doesn't respond to that, but she comes back the next night. "Hold on, how many times have you been to this man's restaurant? It's not, I like the food, you like the man. I don't know anything about him. That's not the same as not liking him. What do you know?" He's Korean American, 30-something. He owns the restaurant. He doesn't sleep. He watches people too carefully. He's fine. Disturbingly fine, yes, which is not the point. "Aya, you haven't voluntarily talked to a man in 2 years. Get the soup and get the man." What Aya doesn't know yet, and what we now see, is the other half of Jyn's nights. The restaurant closes its public doors at 4 a.m., but the back entrance on the alley side closes at 6 a.m. Between 4 and 6, midnight soot becomes something else entirely. The back office, soundproofed and swept for bugs weekly, is where the Bay organization conducts its business. Protection agreements with Korean-owned businesses across Atlanta. Arbitration of disputes between rival groups who pay the Bay family for the privilege of operating in their territory. And the management of 3 underground gambling operations in Gwinnett County. Jyn doesn't touch the gambling or the drugs. That's a line he drew at 22 and has never crossed. His uncle Richard doesn't love this. But Jyn is too valuable to lose, and Richard is pragmatic. Richard Bay sits across from Jyn, impeccably dressed, even at midnight. He has the stillness of a man who has never once been uncertain about his place in the world.
Gemma arrives from Seoul on Friday.
"I know.
This alliance with the Yun family is not optional, Jyn. It's been years in negotiation. Her family controls distribution networks we need."
You understand what this marriage means for the organization. I understand. You've been distracted. I'm not distracted. Barry tells me you've been sitting with a woman in the restaurant, a customer. Customers sit in restaurants. That's what they're for. Don't be clever with me. You know what I'm saying. A long silence. Jyn doesn't break eye contact. It's nothing. But the way he says it, even Richard can hear it isn't nothing. Aya arrives at 2:15 a.m. as usual, still in her scrubs under her coat. Rough night. An 8-year-old with a head injury. She'd held it together until the parents arrived, and then she'd needed the walk, the cold air, the ritual of coming here. She's surprised to find Jyn at the bar rather than the back table. He looks different tonight. Tighter around the eyes, his jaw set harder. She sits beside him without being invited. He looks at her, and something loosens fractionally. Bad night? Complicated one. The bartender brings her broth without her ordering. She wraps her hands around the bowl. My patient tonight was 8 years old. Bike accident. Subdural hematoma. He's going to be fine. We got to him fast enough. But his mother... She doesn't finish that sentence. You take it home with you. Every night. How do you keep going back? Because the alternative is 8-year-olds with head injuries and no one who knows what they're doing in the room. He studies her face for a long moment. I want to tell you something. Okay. The restaurant. It's not the only thing I run. She waits. She's an ER nurse. She's good at letting silences breathe. My family has other operations in Atlanta. I'm involved in them. I've been involved since I was 14 years old. He doesn't name what it is. He doesn't have to. She grew up in Atlanta. She's worked Grady's ER for 4 years. She knows what certain families and certain communities operate. She's treated the people on all sides of those operations. How involved? Enough that you should know before this goes any further. Before what goes further? Whatever this is. A long silence. She looks at her broth, then at him. I lost my brother 2 years ago. Marcus. He was 21. He got pulled into something. Not Korean organized crime. Different world. But same gravity. Same pull. I watched it happen and I couldn't stop it. And then I was standing at a graveside in December. I'm sorry. I'm not telling you that so you'll feel bad. I'm telling you so you understand why I'm sitting here processing this instead of walking out. And I'm still here. I don't know what that means yet. Jyn disclosed his criminal involvement to Aya because he felt she needed to know what she was walking toward. He did not tell her about Gemma because, at this point, he had not yet decided whether Gemma was his future. In his mind, the arrangement was his uncle's plan, not a done deal. He was still telling himself he could find a way out of it. This is not a deception designed to manipulate Aya. It is the self-deception of a man who has spent his entire life being told his choices aren't his own, and hasn't yet confronted that he's been complicit in accepting that. Gemma Yun is not what Aya would imagine if she imagined anything, which she doesn't because she doesn't know Gemma exists yet. Gemma is quiet, observant, and has already assessed Midnight Sit's operations with the efficiency of someone who grew up learning to read rooms. She arrived with luggage, a formal letter from her family, and absolutely no illusions about what this arrangement is. She has dinner with Jyn in the restaurant before service. She speaks to him in Korean. He responds in kind. The conversation is cordial, structured. Gemma, you don't want this. My wants aren't... I'm not asking what your uncle wants. I'm telling you what I can see. You don't want this. And I think you should know that I'm not entirely sure I want it either. He looks at her, surprised. This is not the script he expected. I'm not your enemy, Jyn. I'm also trapped. We can either pretend we aren't, or we can be honest with each other. What does honest look like? It looks like you telling me there's someone else. A long pause. It's not... She doesn't know what she is to me yet. But you do. He doesn't answer, which is its own answer. Aya's mother, Rosamond Mercer, is sitting at the kitchen table when Aya gets home from her shift. This happens sometimes. Rosamond has a key, she worries. She shows up with groceries when she thinks her daughter isn't eating enough, which is most of the time. You look like you slept in a hospital. I work in a hospital, Mama. You look like you slept in one. Sit down. She puts a plate of eggs in front of Aya. Aya eats because she's too tired to argue. Allison called me. Allison needs to stay in her lane. She's worried about you. So am I. She says you've been going to some restaurant after your shifts. I eat food at a restaurant. This is not a mental health crisis. She says there's a man. Aya puts down her fork. Allison Carter is a snitch, and I'm going to put her on the overnight pediatric ward for a month. Baby, it's been 2 years since Marcus. You've been carrying it alone this whole time. If there's someone who makes the nights a little lighter, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's complicated. Most things worth having are. Aya arrives to find the restaurant more populated than usual for this hour. A private party in the back room, formally dressed Koreans she doesn't recognize. She thinks nothing of it. Private events happen. She's at her window table with her broth when Gemma Yun walks through the main dining room, pausing to speak to the hostess. She's elegant, Korean, dressed for a formal dinner, and she carries herself like someone who understands exactly what kind of room she's in at all times. Their eyes don't meet. Aya registers her the way you register an interesting stranger, and moves on. Then Jyn comes in from the back hallway, and Gemma turns to him, and he puts his hand briefly on her arm. A gesture that's familiar in the way that only people with history move around each other. Aya watches this from her window table. She is very still. Jyn sees her. Something crosses his face. Not guilt exactly, but the look of a man who has been running 2 truths simultaneously and just watched them arrive in the same room. He says something to Gemma quietly. Gemma glances toward the window table. She takes in Aya in a single look that is not unkind, and she excuses herself back to the party. Jyn crosses to Aya's table. She speaks first. Who is she? Her name is Gemma Yun. And? She arrived from Seoul 2 weeks ago. My uncle arranged it. The families have been negotiating an alliance for years, a formal partnership. They want it sealed with a marriage. The word lands between them like something dropped from a height. So you have an arranged fiancé. I haven't agreed to it. Jyn, she's here. She's at a dinner party in your restaurant. How long have you known? My uncle told me 4 weeks ago. You've been sitting at my table every night for 4 weeks. Yes. And you didn't think I needed to know that. I thought I was trying to find a way out of it before it became something you had to worry about. That's not your decision to make for me. I know. She picks up her coat from the back of the chair. Her hands are steady. She's very good at keeping her hands steady. I grew up in Atlanta. I know what your family does. I sat with that information, and I decided it didn't change how I felt. You know what I don't sit with? Men who decide what I can and can't handle. Aya, don't. She leaves. He watches her go through the window as she walks back toward the direction of the hospital. At the parking structure, 2 days later, 6 a.m. Aya is walking to her car after her shift when Quan steps out of the shadows near the stairwell. She stops. Her hand moves toward the panic button on her badge. I'm not going to hurt you. My name is Quan. I work for Jyn. Then you need to step back from me right now. I'm here because Jyn would not come himself, because he respects you enough to not push. But I don't have that problem. Say what you need to say. Richard Bay knows who you are. He had you looked into after he saw you on the restaurant cameras. He knows where you work, where you live, that your mother is in Decatur. He's not making a threat yet, but if Jyn refuses Gemma Yun, Richard will look for leverage. Aya is very still. I'm not telling you this to scare you into walking away from Jyn. I'm telling you because you deserve to know what you're in. Jyn thinks he can protect you and handle his uncle at the same time. I've worked for this family for 12 years. I know what Richard Bay does when he's crossed. Why are you telling me instead of him? Because Jyn will minimize it. He loves you, and that makes him an optimist. I don't have that problem either. A long pause. Does he know you're here? No. She looks at him for a long moment. Then she nods once and gets in her car. Aya didn't plan to call Gemma Yun. She got the number from Jyn's contact in a moment that surprised even herself. She texted him simply, "I need to speak to Gemma. Please give her my number and ask if she'll meet me." He did it without asking why. Gemma is already at the coffee shop when Aya arrives. She's ordered 2 coffees. This is either confidence or efficiency, and Aya suspects it is both. "Thank you for coming. I was going to reach out to you myself. You saved me the trouble." They look at each other plainly. "I'm not here to ask you to step back. This is your life too." "I know. I'm here because it's my life, and I'm tired of other people making decisions in it." "So you don't want the arrangement either?" "I want to go back to Seoul and run my family's legitimate business interests, which are considerable, without being traded like a merger asset. But that's not... I didn't come here to make you feel better about Jyn. I came because you deserve the truth." "What truth?" "Jyn has never once, in the 2 weeks I've been here, behaved as if we are going to be married. He has been respectful and cold and entirely somewhere else in his head. I knew about you before you walked into the restaurant that night. He mentioned a woman who worked at the hospital. He didn't describe you as a customer." A pause. "What did he describe me as?" "He said, there's someone who makes 3 a.m. bearable. That's not how a man talks about a stranger." Jyn stands before Richard Bay, with Barry positioned near the door. Gemma is not present. She is, at this moment, on a phone call with her family in Seoul, having made a decision of her own. "I'm not marrying Gemma Yun." Richard doesn't move. "Jyn, the Yun family alliance can be structured as a business partnership, equity agreement, revenue sharing. You don't need a marriage to seal a business deal in 2024, unless you're still operating like it's 1987. The Yun family expects." Gemma Yun called her father this afternoon and told him she was declining the arrangement. She did it herself. Her father, surprisingly, was not as resistant as you'd expect. Turns out Gemma's been the one pushing back on this for 2 years, and he'd been waiting for her to say it directly. A silence. This woman, the nurse. Don't. She's not one of us. Neither am I. Not really. Not the way you want me to be. I've run your books and managed your agreements and kept this organization's hands clean for 12 years. I want out, Richard. Not tonight. Not without a transition. But I want out, and she has nothing to do with that. That's been true for longer than she's existed in my life. Richard looks at his nephew for a long moment. There's something in his face that might be the beginning of grief. Your father would be... My father is gone. I'm still here, and I'm telling you what I need. Aya is walking to her car after her shift, late, always late, when she sees Jyn leaning against the wall near the parking structure entrance. No driver, no Barry, just him, in a jacket instead of a suit, hands in his pockets, looking like a man who walked here and needed the walk. She stops a few feet away. You're not supposed to just show up at someone's workplace. I know, I'm sorry. I needed you to hear this from me, not Barry, not Gemma. I already heard it from both of them. Then you know I told my uncle tonight. I heard. It's not going to be clean. Getting out of a family like this, it'll take time. There will be a period where I'm still involved while I transition. I'm not going to lie to you about what that means. I know what it means. I'm a night shift ER nurse in Atlanta. I'm not naive. I withheld something from you. The Gemma situation. That was wrong. I thought I was protecting you from a problem I could solve. That's a pattern I have. Managing information to control outcomes. And it's not who I want to be with you. She looks at him for a long time. My brother Marcus made choices I couldn't reach him from. I tried for a year, and then I watched the gravity take him. I'm not willing to do that again. If you tell me you're getting out, I need that to be true. It's true. And if the organization makes it complicated, then I deal with complicated. But I deal with it transparently. No managing. No deciding what you can handle. A long pause. Atlanta hums around them. A siren somewhere in the distance, a MARTA train above, the city's persistent midnight heartbeat. I'm not promising anything tonight. I'm not asking for a promise. I'm asking for a chance to start over, honestly. She studies his face in the parking lot light. There's a 24-hour diner on Ponce. The coffee is terrible and the eggs are inconsistent. It's nothing like your restaurant. Okay. But it's 5 minutes from here, and I haven't eaten since noon. He doesn't smile, but his eyes do. Lead the way. The restaurant is the same. The amber light, the charcoal smell, the seolleongtang white as milk. What's different? Jyn is at the window table, not the owner's table in the back. He's made space in the front of his life for the things that matter. Aya arrives in her scrubs at 2:17 a.m. and slides into the chair across from him without ceremony. He pushes a bowl of seolleongtang to her side of the table. He already ordered. Long night. Tell me. And she does, the way she always does. Because somewhere between midnight and morning, in the space where the city goes quiet enough to hear the truth, she found the one person who makes the dark shift bearable. Jyn spent the next 18 months transitioning out of the Bay organization, slowly, legally where possible, without bloodshed. Quan left with him and now manages security for 3 legitimate Midtown restaurants, including Midnight Soot. Richard Bay did not forgive his nephew easily. But Richard Bay also, it turned out, was not entirely made of stone. He came to the restaurant alone one Tuesday evening, sat at a table, and ate in silence. Jyn sent out seolleongtang, his grandmother's recipe. Richard didn't say anything, but he came back the following Tuesday. Gemma Yun returned to Seoul, restructured her family's business into a legitimate import enterprise, and sent Aya a jade bracelet as a wedding gift 2 years later, with a note that said only, "I hope the nights are lighter." They were. If this story moved you, share it and subscribe for new stories every week. And if you know someone who works the night shift and needs to remember they're not invisible, send this to them.